A pharaoh defied the gods. Akhenaten's heresy shocked ancient Egypt. Did it doom the empire? We'll uncover his radical reforms, their impact, and his mysterious legacy. Let's dive in. To understand Akhenaten's heresy, we need to step back to the golden age of Egypt's 18th dynasty, around 1390 BCE. Picture a thriving empire under Amenhotep III, Akhenaten's father, a ruler who brought Egypt to the height of its power. Wealth poured in from trade routes stretching across the Nile and beyond, filling the royal coffers with gold, ivory, and precious stones. Temples to the god Amun, the king of the gods, glittered with treasures, their walls adorned with intricate carvings of divine victories. Pharaohs were seen as living gods, their every word a command from the heavens. Amenhotep III built grand monuments that still stand today, like the towering colossi of Memnon, two massive statues guarding his mortuary temple. He secured peace through diplomatic marriages, taking foreign princesses as wives to seal alliances with neighboring kingdoms like Mitanni and Babylon. It was a time of stability, prosperity, and unmatched power, a perfect stage for a young prince to inherit. That prince was Amenhotep IV, a name that would soon be forgotten as he transformed into Akhenaten, a pharaoh whose actions would echo through history. But even in his early years, there were signs of something different, a spark of rebellion against the traditions that had defined Egypt for centuries. Some scholars, like James Henry Breasted, call him the first individual in history, a man with a vision unlike any before him, a vision that would challenge the very foundations of his empire. As a young pharaoh, he began to favor the sun disk, Aten, over the traditional gods of Egypt. The Aten wasn't new. It had been a minor deity for centuries, often depicted as a solar disk with rays ending in hands, offering life to the earth. But under Amenhotep IV, the Aten would become the center of a revolution, a symbol of a new spiritual order that would turn Egypt upside down. Why would a pharaoh, raised in a world of polytheism, risk everything for a single deity? What drove him to abandon the gods his ancestors had worshipped for generations? Let's explore the moment that some say brought the empire to the brink of collapse, a moment that would redefine what it meant to be a pharaoh in ancient Egypt. We'll uncover the truth behind Akhenaten's early reign and the bold decisions that set the stage for his radical transformation, decisions that would test the resilience of an ancient civilization. In the 5th year of his reign, around 1349 BCE, Amenhotep IV made a shocking move. He changed his name to Akhenaten, meaning effective for Aten. This wasn't just a name change, it was a declaration of Akhenaten's heresy, a moment that would redefine ancient Egypt and send ripples through its history. He proclaimed Aten as the sole god, potentially introducing monotheism to a land that had worshipped a pantheon of gods for centuries. Gods like Amun, Osiris, and Isis, each with their own temples, priests, and festivals. Akhenaten ordered the closure of these temples, stripping their priests of power and redirecting their wealth to build new open-air temples for Aten. Imagine the scene. Akhenaten and his queen Nefertiti standing in the sunlight, their arms raised to the sky, chanting the great hymn to Aten, a text that calls Aten the sole god without another beside him, the creator of all life. The hymn, found in the tomb of a noble named Ai, describes Aten as the giver of light, the one who makes the earth green and creates man and beast, a poetic vision of a universal deity that some scholars like Robert North see as a sincere expression of Akhenaten's faith. It's a hymn that paints a picture of a god who is everywhere, whose rays touch every corner of the earth, bringing life and warmth to all. These temples, unlike the dark, enclosed sanctuaries of Amun, were designed to let the sun's rays flood in, symbolizing Aten's all-seeing power, a power that Akhenaten believed should be worshipped above all others. But Akhenaten didn't stop there. He abandoned Thebes, the religious heart of Egypt, a city that had been the center of Amun worship for centuries, its temples bustling with priests and pilgrims. Instead, he built a new capital called Akhetaten, modern-day Amarna, 200 miles north on virgin land. a place untouched by the old gods. This city, completed in just 3 years using small talatat blocks, was a symbol of his break from tradition, with boundary stelae declaring his eternal devotion to Aten. Akhetaten wasn't just a city, it was a statement, a place where the royal family could worship without the influence of the old priesthood, a place where Akhenaten could create a new world dedicated to his god. The city's layout was carefully planned, with wide streets, a central palace, and the Gempaton temple, where the royal family would offer daily rituals to Aten. Nefertiti played a key role, depicted as equal to the king, performing rituals in stunning reliefs that show her smiting enemies or offering to Aten alongside Akhenaten. Some carvings even show her driving a chariot, a role typically reserved for pharaohs, highlighting her unprecedented power and influence in this new religious order. The art of the Amarna period was unlike anything before, naturalistic, intimate, showing the royal family in tender moments, like the queen on Akhenaten's lap, their children playing at their feet, a stark contrast to the rigid, idealized depictions of past pharaohs. But how did the Egyptian people react to this upheaval? What did it mean for a society built on centuries of tradition, a society that had never known a world without its many gods? Stay tuned to find out how Akhenaten's heresy turned Egypt upside down and what it meant for the people who lived through this radical transformation. Akhenaten's heresy sent shockwaves through ancient Egypt, disrupting every layer of society in ways that few could have predicted. The powerful priesthood of Amun, once the backbone of religious life, was furious as their temples were shut down, their influence erased, and their wealth seized to fund Akhenaten's new vision. For centuries, these priests had held immense power, acting as intermediaries between the gods and the people, their temples serving as centers of community and worship. Now, they were cast aside, their voices silenced in the face of Akhenaten's new order. The people felt the strain. Traditional festivals honoring Amun, which had brought communities together with music, dance, and offerings, were banned, leaving a void in the cultural life of Egypt. Worship was now centered on Aten, with the royal family as the sole intermediaries, a dramatic shift that left ordinary Egyptians disconnected from their spiritual practices. Imagine the confusion. For generations, Egyptians had prayed to a pantheon of gods for everything from bountiful harvests to protection in the afterlife. But now, only Aten mattered, and only the king and queen could speak to him. Art changed dramatically during the Amarna period, reflecting Akhenaten's vision in ways that were both beautiful and unsettling. Gone were the idealized, rigid depictions of pharaohs that had defined Egyptian art for centuries. Instead, we see Akhenaten with an elongated head, thin neck, and rounded belly, a style some believe reflected his real appearance, possibly due to a medical condition, while others see it as a symbol of Aten's divine light transforming the royal family. These images found in Amarna's workshops show a new intimacy. Akhenaten and Nefertiti playing with their daughters, sharing moments of tenderness, a stark contrast to the formal, godlike portrayals of past pharaohs. But while Akhenaten focused on his religious revolution, he neglected Egypt's empire, a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. The Amarna letters, a collection of diplomatic correspondence written in Akkadian cuneiform, reveal a troubling picture of a pharaoh distracted by his faith. Vassal states like Byblos, loyal to Egypt for generations, begged for help against the Hittites, a rising power in the north, but Akhenaten ignored their pleas, too consumed by his devotion to Aten to care about the empire his father had built. This neglect led to territorial losses in the Middle East and Nubia, weakening Egypt's influence abroad at a time when it needed to be strong. Scholar Donald Redford argues this was a political move to weaken the priesthood, but it came at a cost. Egypt's allies felt abandoned, and its enemies grew bolder. At home, the move to Amarna isolated the royal family from the Theban elite, who resisted his changes, as seen in speeches on boundary stelae, where Akhenaten responds to their derision, accusing them of failing to understand his divine mission. The tension was palpable. While Akhenaten saw himself as a prophet of Aten, many saw him as a heretic tearing apart the fabric of their society. Was Akhenaten's vision worth the chaos? Did his obsession with Aten bring Egypt to the brink of collapse, as some have claimed? Wait until the end to see how it all unraveled and what it meant for the future of this ancient empire. An empire that had stood strong for centuries but now faced an uncertain path. Akhenaten's reign ended around 1336 BCE, after 17 years of radical change that had turned Egypt upside down. But what happened after his death? His son Tutankhamun inherited the throne at just 9 years old, a child caught in the aftermath of his father's controversial revolution, under pressure from the restored priesthood of Amun, who were eager to reclaim their power. The young king changed his name to Tutankhamun, a clear signal of a return to the old ways, a return to Amun worship. The capital moved back to Thebes, the city Akhenaten had abandoned, and Amarna, once a bustling center of Aten worship, was left to crumble in the desert sands, its temples and palaces buried by time. Later pharaohs, like Horemheb, went even further in their efforts to erase Akhenaten's legacy. They chiseled his name from monuments, temples, and king lists, making him a non-person in Egyptian history for centuries, a forgotten pharaoh whose very existence was wiped from memory. His tomb in Amarna, meant to be his eternal resting place, was found empty, with possible remains discovered in the mysterious KV-55 tomb in the Valley of the Kings, though scholars still debate if it's truly him, with some suggesting the body could belong to another royal like Smenkhkare, a shadowy figure from the Amarna period. So, did Akhenaten's heresy doom ancient Egypt, as some have claimed? Not quite. Egypt recovered quickly, with traditional religion restored under Tutankhamun and his successors. The empire continued to thrive under later dynasties, like the 19th dynasty of Ramses II, who would lead Egypt to new heights of power and glory. But Akhenaten's legacy lives on in the questions he left behind, questions that still captivate historians and archaeologists today. Some, like scholar Cyril Aldred, see him as a visionary who introduced monotheism centuries before its time, a pharaoh who dared to dream of a new spiritual order, one that some even link to later monotheistic religions like Judaism. Others call him a heretic who nearly broke Egypt with his reckless reforms, a ruler whose obsession with Aten blinded him to the needs of his people and his empire. His story, buried for millennia, was rediscovered in the 19th century when archaeologists began excavating Amarna, unearthing the ruins of his city and the stunning art that defined his reign. The discovery of Nefertiti's bust, one of the most iconic artifacts of ancient Egypt, brought Akhenaten's era back into the spotlight, sparking debates that continue to this day. Was he a genius who saw beyond the traditions of his time, or a fool whose actions threatened the stability of an ancient civilization? What do you think, genius or fool? Was Akhenaten a visionary or a heretic? Share your thoughts below, like and subscribe to Ancient Chronicles HD for more historical mysteries. Thanks for watching. See you in the next adventure.